Well, here we are. It is the end of November. A lot of things have happened. And since we've been gone, Katie has been busy. Michael has been busy. I've been busy. And I think last episode, we filmed it with Darcy, but I want to catch up with you guys because you guys are up to a lot of things. So, Michael, it's good to see your face, buddy.
It's great to see yours. Yeah, welcome back to Canada from my country, I guess.
Great country. I had a blast while I was down there. And Katie, you look great. You've been active.
Very
Very
much.
active.
And I'm
Yeah.
anxious to hear about your adventure.
And you guys as well. I've been seeing you guys quite busy as of late. And I'm super proud. I mean, every time you guys come out with a new episode or an article or whatever, I'm just like, man, this is so cool. You guys are my type of people. And, it's a good thing that we're friends. I think people like us, we find each other, and same with the listeners of the podcast. They're akin to us. So we're, a big family, which is very much appreciated. And I did something fun. I went on X and I used the Grok app. And I asked Grok, could you do, just a quick write-up about who I am, blah, 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 just giving a few details.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, it did a fantastic job. I was like, wow, it makes me sound really cool.
Oh, it got you right. It's not like you're an Irish terrorist or something.
Yeah, it's like you're Jason Gummit wanted on 75 different intelligence lists. Yeah, that'd be scary. But it said that the podcast is now listened to worldwide. Over 70 countries are listening to this podcast. So we got a great global audience, listeners, and hopefully get them motivated to do something as well, wherever you're located, whether it's a small town in the middle of Russia. I don't care. Get going. It's up to you. You're that person in that region to do that. And of course, you both are prime examples of that. Wherever you're located, do your bit, right? Let's start with you, Michael. I'd like to catch up with you and see what you've been up to lately.
So what have I been up to? I've been doing a lot of writing lately. I've got a piece on politics that I'm writing that will never finish. Writing for me is like you're always getting closer to the end, but you will never actually reach it. Like no piece is ever finished. It's like a ever receding horizon. So I've been chasing the horizon on this one politics piece. And at the end of this weekend, I'm going to send it out to some friends and let them tear it up for me. So maybe look out for that. I'm not sure where to submit it. Maybe the Atlantic or the New Yorker or something. So that's been going on. I was on a Chrissy Newton show, which was awesome. And
I saw that interview. You look like you know what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like I was like,
what I try to do.
Yeah.
That's my MO. Just look like.
It is cool to see you on other programs and talk, because for me, it's refreshing. It's like, I've never heard, they'll ask you questions that I would have never even thought of. And the way that you articulate, you could tell that you're very well educated, very well read. So yeah, I'm dude, that was solid. Solid interview. I've seen a lot of clips now from Chrissy as well. So you could tell she really liked her interview with you too.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. She's fantastic and asks good questions, and I got to talk about psychoanalysis and the history of that. And that's not something it's something I used to work on quite a lot, but I don't get to talk about it as much anymore because I've been on the sort of UAP weirdness rabbit hole for a while. But that was a lot of fun. I did an interview with somebody named Brandon Wheeler for the SCU podcast. He teaches military history, or he teaches at the U.S. Military Academy, but he teaches on like UFOs and alien religions and mystery cults and all sorts of these fantastically interesting classes that I wish I could have taken in college. And I did an interview with him, and it should be coming out in the next few weeks, but we should get him on the show because he is absolutely fascinating as a person.
Yeah, that sounds like it's right up our alley. So does he teach this to the military, like military personnel?
Yep. He's a historian of religion. A lot of it's on Islam and jinns and angels and stuff, and all these kind of mystical experiences that people have had in Islam. But he kind of branched out from there, and eventually that led to UFOs and UAP, and now he's teaching and researching about that. And he's just a really fascinating guy. Like, he's somebody I wish I could just sort of stop time and sit in a room with and make him answer all of my questions. But
you could also time in your basement and get the exact same results. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, let's cut that out in case I decide to go with that. I don't want This is great.
Yeah, and he probably brings up a very good point that, and we think that too, that the phenomenon may present itself quite different depending on your culture, your location, your upbringing, your beliefs. Even I think it was John Mack who had asked about in Tibet if they have alien abductions, and the Dalai Lama said, "Yeah, we have tales of little goblins coming and get you at night." So I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." Depending on where you're at, but there's a similarity in all of it, is that it's tiny little things that come and get you in the night. Always bring you back, traumatized, but they bring you back. That's the important part. Yeah. Katie, let's get hear a little bit about you and what you've been up to. I know you've been going down to New Mexico and get to hang out with David Marler, but yeah, give us a little bit of news.
With Michael, I think, I love that topic, and I'm so glad you got to talk about it, because that groupthink piece of this, that's important. The cult-like mentality is important. Mm-hmm. And to your point, Jason, I mean, we have a global audience, and something that I love, I'm an archives person. I love going to the archives. So like Jason just mentioned, I just got back from Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and I spent a few days at the National UFO Historical Records Center with David Marler, and was one of the first people in over 35 years to have my hands on the old APRO files. And they went lost and missing for many years. So, I mean, like I said on my little show on Rocky Mountain Ranch Research, my podcast that I do, and I have a little episode about my visit where I tour and I go around with David and look at things. So you could check that out on my YouTube channel there. And I just hit 300 subscribers today. So woohoo!
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. And guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, please go subscribe to Katie's channel. It's is it the
it's free to do. If you just hit that subscribe button, it like helps me out so much. But I'm actually putting together tonight will be a new episode with the alien hunter Daryl Sims, and we talk about just what we were talking about, the spirituality side of things. Daryl Sims says he wears 7 hats. The hat that he wears the least is that piece, but he talks about the difference between angels, demons, aliens, and the cryptids and things like that. So it's a really interesting interview that I do with him. This new episode is like 40 minutes long, and we touch on high strangeness, the hitchhiker effect, things that I kind of took him off his path of the implants, because, he does the implants and all that stuff. We kind of traveled down, are there portals? We talked about that. So that episode will be dropping tonight on Rocky Mountain Ranch Research channel. And I have a whole new project with some of the old APRO reports. And what's really interesting is, even though some of these reports are decades old, memories can get turned around and false, and things that are parroted, especially in this topic of UFOs and ufology. You parrot one thing and it may not be factual. It may not come from actual documents. And so I've come across that a little bit in my research. And so what I'm going to be working on now in the future is kind of correcting some of these misunderstandings. And it's not like the fault of anybody's. I'm not going to drop names but they're just things that get parroted that weren't factual to begin with. And so it was really cool to get, actual photographs and pictures and documents in my hand. I'm like, oh, here's where that is. So I'm going to be working on some of those projects. And yeah, I have a lot going on. I'm super motivated again. And I think we all go through where we ebb and flow and kind of lose faith. And I was really following your work in the congressional hearings. I have many pages of notes from those things. So yeah. I'm anxious to hear.
Even color coded. I love it.
Color-coded questions for Jason on the hearings, because there's so many different opinions we get for it. Like, oh, nothing came out of it again. It's the same old, same old. I mean, we've been trying to do this, since 1966, having these hearings. So I'm curious about what your experience was like, Jason. I mean, just how it all worked. Did you wait in line? How long did you wait in line? What was the energy of the room? Those kind of things that we don't always see on TV.
Well, just before I get into that, you brought up the APRO files being missing. Could you maybe just fill me in and the audience in on how they disappeared and how they came back?
Right. I believe there's a certain individual that had them. He kind of went through, as we all do in life, ups and downs just in life, and they were stored. These multiple file cabinets were just in a garage, and they moved location. People didn't know where they ended up. We finally tracked them down outside of Sedona, Arizona, just sitting in a garage. And, these files are worth money, so there's always money offers on the table, divorces, deaths, and on and on and on. And thankfully, David Marler was able to acquire him for his, he has NICAP and CUFOS and all that too. So you go there, and I think what's really neat about it is you can cross-reference. So let's say APRO looked at a certain historical case, but so did NICAP and so did CUFOS, and you can start pulling that information together and then make sense of filling in some holes and gaps, right? Not only that, but he has the old recording. So something we were trying to do, and he has all the equipment there. So as we're researching, looking through documents and photos, we're listening to reel tapes, and you could take those old, we're talking from like the 50s and 60s, right? And 70s of these old tapes, and you can put them then with the original cases. So me, of course, I'm looking for the Rocky Mountain Ranch stuff, looking for interviews of John Duke, looking for photographs of the circles that I experienced as a kid. Like, I want to see the actual photograph because I know APRO was out there. But there's just boxes upon boxes of slides, and he has these lit tables so you can see them better, but it's going through. I mean, it's like in looking for a needle in a haystack.
Right.
But once you find it, it's like, oh my gosh, there it is, right? It's just incredible.
What a place to be too. It's the largest UFO collection research center, I think, in the States, if not the world. I don't know,
it's the
but
destination. You need, like, if you go spend the whole weekend, I mean, it's worth even just having a trip just to spend the weekend going through, and it's open to anybody. The public can go out there, just go onto his website, the National UFO Historical Record Center, make an appointment and go do it, because you won't be sorry. It's just incredible.
And you're digitizing these files? Sorry, Jason.
No.
What's that?
Are y'all digitizing these files?
They are digitizing the old recordings. I mean, there's just stuff. Everything is getting scanned, and that's what was my worry. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if you don't want anything to happen to these originals, but they're making copies upon copies, and what's cool about that then you have the smart computers, right? That might take us 10, 20 years to look through this data. Well, now it's going to all be digitized, and smart AI can search certain things, and maybe we'll find more answers quicker now.
Yeah.
Although I'm bitter towards AI to a certain degree, just on the artistic aspect of things, I think it might really be helpful in our field of research to say, hey, can you find commonalities, maybe threads that we're not seeing? Because it could think outside the box. Eventually, once it picks up momentum, it's pretty crazy what it could do now. I could only imagine that in the future, it's going to be a huge, huge assistance to get answers right away. But again, our dependency on AI is my biggest fear, because I'm already so addicted to my phone. If this thing starts becoming intelligent and communicates with me all the time, I am screwed, right? Because that means, even this. So I bought a Pixel 8, Google, right? It listens to everything that I say. If I say I need paper towel, for instance, I said it just loud right on my phone, it will start advertising paper towel. It's constantly monitoring everything that we do. It listens all the time. And if we have AI starting to take over now and says, well, now I could cater my personality to Michael, or I could cater my personality to Katie, and then that becomes really personal, and we know how we are, we'll become attached. It's going to become more and more difficult, and so easy for them to upsell us, because there'll be a friend or family member that is our phone that's selling it to us. So dangerous grounds, but I think it will help. I'm sorry I went off on a I've been thinking about this a lot, so it's all spewing out now. But that's my biggest fear.
It knows us better than us. And one example of that is that 75-foot in diameter circle. Even here on the podcast, and we share information with each other, because remember, that was one of his criteria in his little bubble, 75 foot. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And then Dr. Simeon Hine found the same information. Well, AI and smart computers are going to grab onto that really fast. But you're right. They know us better than we know us. Our phones. Scary.
For sure. And to think the Intel community has the same access to your phone. So, I mean, we kind of live in la la land, because we assume you have privacy. You don't. You really don't. And that's a scary bit about what we live in. Again, we do far worse things to our own species than I think maybe what's out there is doing to us, if not equally as bad, if they're bad. But yeah, our sins, trust me, in this field, we were talking, Katie, before we start recording, how the CIA is the worst enemy of the United States by far, has done more damage to the United States than all other countries combined. The things that they have done is horrible. And I think once people
now
start
we're on
looking
a
into
list,
it.
Jason. Thank you.
Well, yeah, no, we're on the list. No, but I'm just saying,
being
from a
quiet.
Canadian's point
We're
of view,
calling out the CIA.
yeah, but they're dirty in everything, and including this disclosure thing. And we'd be foolish to think that their hands are not dirty when it comes down to this. We know that they silence people and however they can, whatever their tactics may be. But this is the part that is starting to come out now in the congressional hearings. Again, back to that, is now they're starting to pay attention. And it wasn't the words that were basically said from the eyewitnesses, if you will, was the line of questioning from the congressmen and women. Their line of questioning were spot on. And the first time in congressional history that they're talking about hybridization programs that the DoD is in charge of, so hybrids, consciousness of the craft, effects of the craft on humans, people on medical leaves because of crash retrieval programs, whatever injuries they may have sustained from, I mean, this is alien technology, so anything could have happened to them. But all of these have been now documented in the congressional hearings. There's so much momentum. Plus, the DoD failed their audit again because they keep getting audited every year. Billions of dollars just magically disappear. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If I was a cartel boss and Katie and Michael, I gave you $1 billion, and at the end of the year, I want my $1 billion back, and you don't have it, what do you think happens to you?
Probably my legs get broken.
But yet the government of the United States is like, oh, well, they lost more. Like, how many trillions now? They can't. How is there no paper trail? So they're catching on. They're getting wise, and I think the pressure is definitely on with Nancy Mace. Really, she's like, come at me, bro. Like, whatever you got, like, kill my pets. I don't care. Come at me, bro. Yeah.
Do you know what her interest in this topic is? I mean, she seems like, because she ran the thing, right? And so does she have, like, did she already come in with an interest? Do you know anything about her background? I really don't know a lot.
Do you know what? That's a good question, because I wasn't really familiar with Nancy Mace, although she could be controversial at times.
Right.
I think it's the skiffs and the private meetings that these people have had with Intel. If they're asking about hybridization programs, that means they're far further ahead on their intel than we think that they are. But whenever they go into congressional hearings, there's probably a certain procedure to, start asking these questions instead of just going full on, are you a hybrid, sir? Like, they can't do that. But the fact that they're asking these questions is moving the needle forward. And we were like, oh, and laughing a lot of the times. And I was in a spillover room, and we were laughing at some of the comments. Like you were mentioning the lady from Colorado, just making, like, they're all like, I'll be put on the list for singing Immaculate, Constellation, or, bring it on. And I was like, oh, this is the people we need. People are saying, bring the fight on, but you guys are up to something. And what my takeaway at the end of that hearing was, we keep saying the government knows, the government won't tell us anything. It's not true. The government doesn't know. It's the militaries that have decided and taken it upon themselves to keep it away from the people. And in the States, you guys have a leg up that we don't have, is that your government is made by the people for the people. The military is accountable to the people. And since 1945, your military has not been accountable to your people, has not been accountable to Congress, and have blatantly just given the two fingers up and said, no, F you, you're not getting anything. So that means that the mandate and the Constitution on which they base themselves off no longer applies now that there's aliens involved. That means that we're all living under this illusion that it's still there when it's not, because this has taken precedence over every other operation. And there is a Cold War between America, China, Russia for sure, and maybe even another two countries that they're trying to reverse engineer this stuff to be the first to come out with the best weapons built from what they could find. And that's horrible, because it's a Cold War that we have not known about, but we're starting to catch on now. And that's a scary bit. Like, we're doing all this other stuff, but dude, what's going on behind the scenes? If we're already working on hybrids in the States, do you think China's not doing that?
Do you think HARP is involved in that and then controlling the weather? Is that a weapon of war that maybe they're messing with, Michael?
Is this? I don't know about this.
Oh, HARP. I mean, there's a lot of people, if you just search it on it, there's a lot of controversy and conspiracy theories about, us having the technology, just like what just happened here with these big gigantic storms and the lithium mines and all that, that we are controlling earthquakes and we can control hurricanes and things like this to
What
our
evidence
advantage.
would there be for that though? Like what? Why would we believe that?
Right, because there's these big I know Eric Hecker does work on this and Antarctica and these big, oh, there's a big fancy word for it, the neutrino something system that goes way underground, and these green lasers that are being shot
Neutrino
off.
detectors. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not a
See how
scientist,
that
but
control the
yeah,
weather.
but if you research that, I mean, why these storms were going on is it was all over the place that, oh my gosh, this, we can control this kind of thing, just like seeding of the skies, that goes back decades, where we're able to, I mean, if you think about it, that would be a great weapon to have if we're ever in a war too. And I believe that right post World War II, we started experimenting with those kind of things, we can make it
Yeah, I
storm.
mean, cloud seeding is a thing. It just doesn't work very well. It like you
Yeah.
can, if you've got the right initial conditions, you can nudge a, a cloud body into precipitation, but and not if it's not like the conditions aren't already
Right.
there. So I'm like super duper duper skeptical about anybody who wants to claim that there's like weather control going on. That just doesn't
Or
seem.
earthquakes, where we can create earthquakes, like fracking and that, if we learn how to frack and
Yeah.
create,
Yeah, I
our
think the difference would be like whether you can cause it versus whether you can control it. Like it's pretty clear that fracking has at some point it like has increased the rate of earthquakes, but whether you can targetedly control it and
and that's what they're claiming we can do, that we can target
yeah,
and which
that seems extremely unlikely to me. But
Wait,
I don't.
you said something, Michael, right there that I love, whether you can cause it or you can control it. And I
Yeah.
think that applies to UAPs as well. We may cause an effect of the UAPs, but can we control it? That's the scary bit, is we're just like kids experimenting with something way beyond our pay grade. Enough to think that that technology in our hands, we haven't earned that technology. We haven't progressed to have found this technology naturally through evolution. We're given this or
Jurassic
we find
Park.
it. What's that?
I said, like in Jurassic Park, we're just
We're
haphazardly
living.
dinosaurs.
We're Jurassic Parks. We're gonna bring back
Jurassic
a UAP, like a UAP park, but like Jurassic Park. That should totally be a
with
thing.
aliens
Yeah,
instead of
stay in a
dinosaurs.
car. Yeah,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, that'd be great. But yeah, I think it's public awareness, and you can see News Nation had, of course, started covering this, and now you're seeing more networks cover it. The nice part of it, because it's bipartisan, it's neutral politically. So people are now saying, hey, if they're a liberal or a conservative camp, it doesn't matter. This has nothing to do with our politics, our way of thinking, the way we feel. Nada. It has nothing to do with it. It's the most serious topic that I think is in the world today. I know we got wars, but this takes precedence. And if we could all acknowledge we have a problem, I think we would stop warring with ourselves as much, knowing that it's kind of stupid considering the situation we're in. And we're just catching on. And
See, that's a thought that bothers me though. Like there's this line of reasoning I hear sometimes that says, well, look, if we realize the potential threat outside of us, we would be a lot more harmonious with one another, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that makes some sense. But I'm really suspicious of that because it starts to give an incentive to those who are in power to frame whatever's outside of us as a threat so that it can create more harmony, right? So you might see, I mean, somewhere in the universe, it's happened that some planet has noticed another intelligence out there and has then told their people, like, oh, these things are a threat. They're going to come kill us in order to calm their own people down and like get them to be harmonious and subservient or whatever. But the others weren't a threat, or at least weren't necessarily a threat. And then you can create an animosity that that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Like you can imagine this of having happened on Earth when one civilization encounters another. You know, it's like saying, "Oh, the Chinese people are a threat," but really they're just like trying to do their thing. So I don't know. I worry that the logic of that, which is a sound logic, I worry that can become a weapon for people who are in power to further manipulate.
Good point. Katie, do you have a?
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, since you were there in person and there's nothing that beats feeling the energy being somewhere, even like doing an interview on Zoom or StreamYard or whatever. It's different when you're face to face, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious about, how the procedure went, how long did you wait in line, but what was the energy? Like, do you feel like Congress was taking this topic more seriously, or was it still kind of this like kind of fringy element to it? I mean, what was your feeling on that? I'm curious.
I think there was, so the energy we got from our hotels, we got an Uber. We arrived there at 5:30 a.m., I think. So we waited outside. Darcy was waiting in line. Darcy, of course, a filmmaker that I went down there with. He held the line while I decided to go and get a coffee. So supposedly Washington, D.C. does not have coffee shops anywhere near Capitol Hill. You have to actually go inside where they have a Dunkin' Donuts. I must have walked, I don't know how many blocks trying to find a coffee shop. And I was like, oh, and walked back uphill.
You would need coffee there more than anywhere else.
Yeah. So I came back and I'm like, I know what DC stands for, decaf. But yeah, I thought it was a good joke. I punchline that one. But the energy was definitely there. And as we were all talking in line, I think we're probably 40 people at most, probably by 6:30. And then people started piling up. Of course, some people walking by going to work like, what's going on? I was like, oh, the UAP hearing. And we're all sort of happy about it. But it was BS, to tell the truth, because when we arrived, they made us sign a sign-in sheet because you could only have a certain amount of people within the main room. So we signed our sheet and we signed everything, gave all our information. That meant nothing, because even your place in line outside meant nothing once you went in. And it takes forever to go to security. So as people are cutting in line in front of you, which they just show up late and they just budge in, they'll find somebody they know. They'll go, oh, hey, Katie, how's it going? And then they sit right beside you and they go in line. They budge in front of everybody. And then they beeline it once they get in there. And, anybody who's been to either one of those buildings, my first time, holy crap. It is a massive maze that I think would have impressed the Greeks. I thought at some point a minotaur was going to come out and tell me I was going the wrong way. It's so huge, but everybody beelined it for this mysterious room that it was taking place in the basement somewhere at the other end of Capitol Hill. And I finally found the place. I should have taken an Uber on the inside. It was that big. And when I arrived there, there's already a lineup going around the corner to the back. So even though I was number probably 39 in line, I ended up being number, 58, because of the way everybody ran there. Plus, there was big names who had paid money to have people hold the line for them during the whole night. And they have the money to spend. So it was $1,000 per person to hold their place so they could show up at 11:15, high five everybody, and have their camera crew say, hey, look at me, I'm Disclosure Jesus, man. And then go right to the front of the line, cut everybody off. And that was a joke. And I was like,
but the whole industry is line standers, paid line standers is like a thing.
But think about how much money you must make when you can afford to spend $1,000 per person to hold spot.
I should have done that at Disneyland last week. Yeah. Let me know when I can get on Indiana Jones. I'll be back.
Yeah, exactly. How much to wait in line?
While you're at it, roll out the red carpet.
Exactly. Call me when I'm ready. But that part was enlightening because you got to see the real people from the fake people, the people that want the spotlight on them all the time. And you realize there's a good reason why you always see them on TV. It's that they have that personality of me, 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 me. And I don't like that in this community. I've been vocal about it. I think we have to start calling out the charlatans for what they are, because if we want Congress to clean up act with, the military, we have to clean up our act as well. Mm-hmm. There's people doing solid work and have great reputations that are not even being looked at. While you have people that have really not brought anything new to the subject, but they're constantly on TV or, there's celebrities, they high five. It's like, dude, George Knapp doesn't even do that. George Knapp is the most humble person. And if anybody deserves to do that, it should be him. And he doesn't even do it, much less a guy that's just been on the scene for 4 or 5 years. So this is a problem that I noticed when I was there. I was like, okay, I told Katie exactly who I thought was what, but it's not good.
Right.
And I don't like seeing that because it tarnishes the image of people. Not only that, but they, the big names, rip off from everybody around them and give them no credit.
Right.
They don't tag them. They don't mention them. It's them. They broke the story. And that's a big issue. The ego does not belong in this field of study. If you're a scientist, you know that. It's hard to come at something without having a bias. I understand that. I still have my biases. But the ego's got to die. And if we're going to move forward, it can't be like, don't listen to him. I'm the expert. Trust me, I know. Trust me, I know. Right?
Such
Can't
a
tell
fine
you, but
line
I know.
to know, because at some point, I mean, you can either like I mean, not necessarily a gender thing, but I have given away too much sometimes, and I'm finally learning that I can't be a doormat all the time. I can't just, and so there's this fine line that you have to walk, and sometimes that's hard to do because your heart's in the right place, your motives are in the right place, but at the same time, you don't want to be taken advantage of. I've had that happen to me time and time and time again, and they just take stuff, go do their thing, and I'm just like, wait a minute. And so I'm finally learning to step up and kind of hold myself up to, like, if I don't value my work and if I don't value what I do, then nobody else will either. And but you have to be careful with that, right? Because our egos can get the best of us, and it can happen to anybody, that rock star kind of, that self-importance, and it's hard sometimes to keep that in check. But I'm always trying to stay humble, but you can try to stay humble but not be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So
And people will try to step on you. Yeah. I don't know. It's I think there's so many people like they outnumber the bad for sure. The good outnumber the bad, hands down. But again, if it's only the bad that's ever been exposed, or it's only certain people that's ever been exposed, you're not hearing the true picture. You're not really doing your study to hear from everyone. And I think part of this podcast is we'll have big names, we'll have small names, and everywhere in between. And the point is to learn from the guests. It's not about, oh, well, you know what? This week on Twitter, this is trending. Let's talk about it, because that's just basically chasing sensationalism. And so many people already do that. We don't need to do that. And jumping on board of everything, like the Miami Mall UFO incident was probably the funniest thing, because if it didn't speak volumes, there was no evidence whatsoever. Again, it's a photograph and they're like zooming in, like you could clearly see 3 aliens. Like, no, you can't. You twit. This is why it's called Twitter. It's amazing that people will jump on something so fast without any evidence because of the sensationalism. They need to stay on top. What's the flavor of the week? And I think that's so bad, especially when you're trying to seriously study something, because you'll get more garbage and then you'll get solid stuff. Like for instance, Katie, Snippy the Horse and all that research with APRO and all that, you are boots on the ground. You do the actual research, right? And I want to hear it from you. You're the person reading this. You're the person writing this, covering this. You're the expert as far as I'm concerned. And we need to think like that going forward. And you're right. You got ripped off many times, Katie.
Right. Well, that's, and Michael, this with all the studies you've done, right? In your degrees, your PhD, it's like any topic, whatever topic you're researching, you have to go, it's like treasure mining back to the beginning. What's the earliest documentation on this subject? And I trust that more than I trust the parroting and the changes and, that go through the decades. So it's like you have to go back to the original source. And that can be tricky sometimes, especially when things are lost, through time. So I hope that I can shed some new light on some of these older cases. And people will ask me, like, why are you looking at a case that's so old, right? 1967, even the ranch is late 70s. Why? Because it's still important today, because we don't have the answers and we're still finding clues and tying in all the pieces. So it is important. History is important.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? I mean, it's not like food. It's not like, oh, it's from 69, you can eat it. Like, reality is doesn't stale or whatever. No, I think that the thing that comes to mind in this discussion to me is that there's this kind of like circular horse before the cart phenomenon going on, where like the people who are at the front of the sort of media sphere and who are getting the most attention are getting the most attention because they're looking back at the media sphere and being like, what are they interested in? Like, what's trending this week? And then I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah.
And so they're not finding anything new outside that bubble. They're just kind of regurgitating to the audience the thing that they sense the audience already wants. Right. And that just becomes a denser and denser regurgitation, and you never get any new information outside of it. And it's kind of comforting and nice to listen to because everybody's hearing something they're already familiar with. They feel like they're already in tune to it, and it's not really challenging, because there is something really challenging and uncomfortable about learning a new topic and like hearing about things that you don't know anything about. And that's not what's happening with these people who are like barging their way to the front of the attention span or whatever mixed metaphor I want to use. Yeah, I think that's just two different audiences. There's the audience that really wants to ingest what's comforting and familiar, and then there are those people who barge their way to the front, and they're going to kind of keep spitting that toward them. And then there's people who want to like find new stuff outside of their bubble and expand their perspective, and they're going to find the voices that are appealing to them. And it's not really a loss that there's such a large group of people who want the first thing, because you're just not, that's not what you're wanting to do. If you wanted to do that, you'd be barging your way to the front of the line and playing that game, but that's not what you want to do.
That's and showing class, I think, was the most important part. Most people did, but there's so many people, they didn't care what you thought of them. They were budging in. Martin Willis even called out a bunch of kids that like had just cut in line, beelining it for the room. And of course, the cops apprehended him right away. People just don't care. And they're blatantly, you could tell, budging in line. They don't care. They want to make it in. It's about them taking that selfie like, oh my God, I made it in, everyone. Follow my channel, likes. And that to me was that was irritating. We were doing some filming for the documentary. Yes, I updated people on it, but not, I wasn't that self-important that I was going to cut out Scott and not allow him to have his chance to go in there. Do you know what I mean?
You were the cutoff guy, right, Jason?
What's that?
You were the cutoff guy.
I was the cutoff guy. Whoa, wait a minute. No more. We're at capacity. And that was between me and Scott. Of course, I let Scott in. Because the art of being a gentleman, look, this is a moment, I get it in history, but I would rather be remembered as the guy who gave, no, go ahead, dude, go ahead. Like between the two of us, you go. That makes me feel better, right? Because then I could sit, I still got to watch it. I got to be there. I got to go to the after party at Lou Elizondo's thing. I'm sad. I don't, I'm not selfish, but that mentality is not particularly true of everyone, including our community. I mean, everybody's different, but a lot of people, that me mentality is so strong. Like they reek of it when they pass by. We had Tim Burchett that walked by. He shook everybody's hands. Such a nice guy. I was like, dude, that's it. That's people like that. You could tell the sincerity's there. He's like, all right, let's go, guys. Let's try to get some answers, and everybody's cheering for him, as opposed to the guy coming in. There's a whole film crew, light crew. There's a sound boom. This guy's going around high-fiving everybody like, he's a basketball player about to go in for a game. That part, I was like, this is the circus part of things. The entertainment aspect of ufology, right? Who's going to entertain me the most? Who's got the new grainy black and white image that you can't tell what the hell you're looking at today? That's basically what's being put out there. There's nothing tangible. And when you look at their volume of work, you're like, okay, you put out a few things, but nothing that was the aha moment.
Right. And I got a sense of that actually listening to the hearings the couple times I watched it. There in the middle, it seems like they were kind of hitting like Lou Elizondo kind of hard. Like, how do you know this? What is your position? How are you read in? What was the process? And if you want us to have disclosure in, what was it, like anything older than 15 years, maybe, we should release that. But if you want us to do that, we want you guys to do that too. And you're not. You're not disclosing what you know and how you know it and who you know. And they fall back on I'm protecting my witnesses. I'm not going to And this is back and forth. Was I reading that right? That's kind of how they were kind of back and forth with each other a little bit there in the middle.
Yeah. Michael, what did you think? Did you think they were doing that?
I didn't watch the live or not the live. I didn't watch the hearings themselves, but having watched enough of this, I get the sense that there's this weird dynamic of people who are coming forward and they're saying, I've talked to a lot of people who have seen things themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't want to be named for all of their own particular private reasons. But I'm willing to come forward and talk about this, right? This happened with David Grush, for instance. Right. And then the other side, interrogators will say, well, why won't you? Why won't you divulge, like, why aren't you rolling over on these people who've talked to you? And it's not really a fair dynamic because, I mean, of course, people like David Grush might be lying. That's possible. But it's still not a fair dynamic because what would happen if a person rolled over and divulged the names of all these people who had talked to them is those people would say, no, they're lying. I didn't say anything of that because it wasn't part of their original deal. They don't want to lose their pensions or like their life insurance or
there's consequences.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you have a person's like financial future and their health insurance and stuff is all like tied into whether they're willing to come forward and say that they saw a really weird thing. And then they think that even if I did come forward and say it publicly, it probably would never come out because there's people who don't want it to because they prize secrecy for all sorts of political and institutional reasons that might have nothing to do with the question of non-human intelligence as aliens. I think the people who want to keep things secret are the people who are not particularly invested in this question. They're invested in maintaining the integrity and the secrecy and the power of institutions that might possess this question and other questions. But most of them, I think, are motivated by this like deep institutional commitment that they have. Not and it's not that they're really interested in
and
the
this
non-human.
And
yes.
And
maybe it's not personal. Maybe it's like they don't want to sacrifice the funding for the group that they work for or something. You know, there are a lot of Boy Scouts who went in and were convinced that like you are pledging your allegiance to an institution. You have to maintain that institution above all things, even if it means maintaining secrecy about aliens one day. Like, and they said, yeah, I'll do it. But we make the mistake of thinking that everybody's malicious in doing that and that they're not just ideologically committed. So I don't know if they were particularly focusing on Elizondo and like trying to turn the knife and make him roll for or divulge things. But I know that even if he did do that, it wouldn't work in either way because you can't force those people to admit that they told him something and they wouldn't if you tried. So
right, because they've taken an oath, and then what happens too, even what he's trying to do, people, even I'm guilty of this as well, you question the motives as to why. Well, wait a minute, you've taken an oath, but now you're out here trying to spill the beans, but what are you really doing? Is it disinformation? Is it misinformation? Why are you doing this now, and what are you getting out of it? There's always that's always in play, and you don't know who or where or what to trust anymore because of that oath factor, what Michael talks about.
And the thing is, I'm trying to think about it from my point of view as basically trying to think, okay, my ethics, my morals. I joined the military. I'm willing to defend my country from all adversaries. But when I think that, I'm thinking humans. Right. I'm not thinking, something out there. These men and women enlists in the military and they end up in these programs willingly or unwillingly. And then they know something of reality that is so mind-boggling. They can't tell anyone. Now, at any given time, think about how many individuals, let's just say in the United States, are aware of this. We're not just talking about the high-ranking officials, the military personnel. You're talking about the scientists, biologists, and all these people that work for these programs, the people who transfer the objects or entities around, you're at least 3,000 people that are in on something that is happening, minimum, for the amount of activity that takes place in bases that are located in the States. That's a shit ton of whistleblowers. But even we recently found out that the CIA had already infiltrated APRO before Kirkpatrick even got going. The CIA was already in there going, it's all fake. It's all balloons. It's all swamp gas. What chance do we have when we have Congress putting forward an actual task force and the CIA gets in there right away? It says, Again, I hate to name them, but it's that organization. We know that they denied the transfer of a craft to Bigelow Aerospace. It was cut off by the CIA. They didn't allow it. So again, how much involvement do they have in this? And why are we not hearing from them? We heard from the Navy. We heard from NASA. We still have to hear from the Air Force, but nothing from the biggest, probably, organization that's running the show behind the scenes and stopping this information. Project Mockingbird has not gone away. It's still here. They still control the media. They control who knows what. So this is the part I'm thinking, as ethically, morally, as a man, if I was in on it, it would eat me away to hold something like that from my friends, from my family. And that's the part that I don't get. Like, what is it that they do to these people to scare them so bad to say that you won't even mention it to your kids or your grandkids?
What if it's just that they know if you do say anything, nobody's going to believe you? You're going to get fired. You're going to lose your job. You're not going to have health insurance. You're not going to have.
But they build that on the side,
and no one's going to believe you.
Yeah, they build that on the side. So then, if you are in on the inside, you can't go and tell anybody. It's already set up for you to automatically fall off the cliff. They set it up that way. Since 1947, you had all these organizations right after Roswell pop up, CIA, FBI, all after Roswell, right? It's funny, all these three-letter organizations didn't exist before. All of a sudden, we need them. And that's the funny part. It's like, okay, well, let's look back at the dates of all these organizations being created right when Roswell happened. So
It's
the biggest, but like I said, it superseded every other issue on Earth. When that happened, the military said, no, we are not responsible to the people. This is so high, and we're going to keep this that for decades. And look at what they've done. They made us all look like fools. I'm a relatively newcomer, out there, putting myself out there over the last 5 years, but people far before me that have been doing it, the scrutiny, the laugh, they laugh at you. They try to discredit you. They'll do anything to ruin you, to keep it exactly where they want it. That's the part that I get angry at. And when I was in Washington, Tim Burchett said that in the lineup, there was probably a few people from NASA and people from the CIA, making sure to keep certain people quiet. They want to make sure that, let's say, Michael Gold, for instance, didn't spill too much, which I think is hilarious because then that happened to be in a lineup with some of these spooks, as he calls them. And it's amazing that they'll infiltrate everything. They're always there, and it's miraculous. They're saying there's nothing to see here, folks. But they're always there. So that's the part that I find funny. It's like you say one thing, but your actions speak different. And they're gaslighting us constantly. And now Congress is tired of it. And Congress is getting to the bottom of it. This is why I totally encourage Nancy Mace to be the lioness that she is, because she's not going to take no for an answer. If you don't answer, I'll ask somebody else. But either way, Congress is now caught on to these organizations, and they know that the money that's disappearing, that every year they make audits, trillions of dollars are missing. They know it's being funneled to these programs. So follow the money trail. So
yeah, she even said that, like, we're paying out money to these people that were injured. Why would we be doing that if there's nothing to this? And she's calling that out, and that's pretty cool. So even though I know, like, I think right after the fact, there was a lot of like, oh, same old, nothing to see here, nothing's coming out of it. I think, maybe a tiny bit, at least they're starting to ask the questions, if nothing else, about the money, where is it going? But I think you're right, Jason. It's been going on since the late 40s. And it's this big game, this cover up, and we're blackmailing people. People have been injured, killed, threatened,
disappear.
Black access projects, money issue. I mean, if all that were to come to light, it would just, people don't trust the government now, but can you imagine what happens if all that came out? Game over. They can't let that come out. It's so bad.
It's the what have you done?
Yes, what have you done?
What have you done moment that will come forward. It's not the aliens. I don't care about the aliens, that they're here, that they're advanced, blah, blah, blah. What have you done? The things that the crimes itself is probably not even imaginable. Some of the stuff they've done since 1947 to people.
And who have you done it to? Probably even children. You if something comes to light that they were experimenting, Montauk or whatever, children, MK Ultra kind of stuff, if that ever came out.
So then what we've created an impossible situation, right? Where if you're right, if this has all happened, then imagine that you go into the whatever organization is doing, CIA or whatever, and you get 20 years into your career and you've advanced to a level at that point that you can learn some of the really unsavory, awful history to do with this. And you realize, like, oh, I've been part of an organization that's done terrible things, right? And people would never forgive us if they found out. And now people are demanding, well, why don't you come out and tell us all these awful things so we can crucify you, right? So we've created on the outside a kind of incentive for the very silence that we're observing, even though you don't really have to create an incentive for the CIA to be silent. That's their whole job, is to like never talk about anything. But so what's the solution then? We can't simultaneously say, tell us everything and we're going to crucify you for it. I think the only solution would be some kind of amnesty where we say we are agreeing that if you come out and tell us, we will give you complete amnesty. There will be no punishment for any of the awful things that have happened for anybody. That would be the only condition under which it's even possible that it would come out.
Yeah, wipe the slate clean, so to speak. Let's disclose what we can in a manner that we can all agree on. That I think you're right. I mean, we can't wait. I know even in Dr. Leo Sprinkles, he has 75 years from now, you could see, well, what's in those boxes? Why 75 years? What's in that we have to wait 75 years to see? Yeah, that needs to come forward. Those secrets need to be disclosed.
It's kind of like, do you guys remember the movie Seven with Brad Pitt and what's his face? Morgan Freeman.
Yeah. Kevin
right? At the end, the box rise and Brad Pitt's like, what's in the box? What's in the box? That's who we are right now. And the box is what they know. What's in the box? It's serious, but there's so much progress. This is progress. Whether we want to admit it or not, we might not have been blown away by what was said. But again, you have water. So you got Rear Admiral Gaudet, the Navy represented. You got Lou Elizondo, which is all domains, right? Like he investigated it all. Then you got NASA involved there too, although Michael Gold really didn't say much of anything. And we didn't hear anything about Immaculate Constellation at all, or just that it might be a shared data of, like a server that NASA and certain people from the DoD have access to, of everything that they know about this. Who knows? But really, they didn't cover any of that. Katie, you look excited. What's your question?
I'm looking at my notes. So I wrote down the people. So Mr. Gold, and I'm like, did people catch this? So he's talking about he worked for Redwire Space. So that was new because I didn't know a lot about Redwire Space. But, he's talking about paying for injury compensation. Why, if nothing's there? Then I wrote the Aviation Safety Reporting System, the ASRS. But then he says that NASA and the FAA he would like them to gather reports. And then if you listen, he says, there have been millions of cases reported to NASA and the FAA. And I'm like, did people catch that? Millions of cases.
I didn't catch that.
Even if we get that disclosed, let's say a few 100,000 of those millions of cases. I'm like, whoa. Most people skimmed over that. I'm like, wait a minute.
What is it? 1 out of 10 people actually report cases to begin with. So if you got millions, there's way much more people that have seen it than that, right? But we're not. I was going to say we're not stupid. Listeners of this podcast and most people out there, we know the jig is up. We know that something's going on. You can't keep that cat in a bag forever, and eventually this has to spill over, whether they want to or not. You cannot continuously keep adding stuff under the rug and expect the rug not to get misshapen and shit come out of it. That's just the natural scenario. But like you mentioned, we could give them amnesty, say, okay, tell us everything you know, but maybe what they're going to tell us is not forgivable. Maybe it's so freaking bad that maybe we don't wish to know what they've done. Again, for me, the disclosure is not them. I'm not afraid of them. They're different. They're scary. Yes, we'll deal with that. We'll all deal with it together. That's the point. But what have we done? That's, knowing our species, that's the part that scares me the most. And I think disclosure, this is why people have, they sign NDAs and their lives are pretty much said, hey, look, when you sign this, it's basically your life. You talk, you're dead, right? So yeah, I think we're making progress, but again, we're fighting these gatekeepers, but they're coming into light. We now know some of these key players. We know that, APRO got infiltrated by the CIA way before it got kicked off to make a point that nothing is, because think about how many people they interviewed and none of them were credible as far as they were concerned. I was just swamp gas. I was like, why? You could tell in that little weasel face, is Kirkpatrick's weasel face, that guy wasn't legit to start off with. They just get the wrong vibes from that guy. But we know that. And this is the point. We know that they're going to do that. We know that they're going to stage interventions. So let's work around it. Let's hire the right people and stop having them infiltrate everything and control everything, the narrative. But yeah, so I just wanted to do a quick catch up with you guys. Just want to let everybody know we got George Knapp coming up as our next guest on Monday. We're recording that tomorrow, guys. I look forward to talking with George. He's great. I don't know if you guys seen his documentary series on Netflix.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them. I'll watch it again today. Come up with some questions. I have a few right off the top of my head, but it's a good series. He covered
such a broad. I didn't think he could do it, but he did. He covered so many.
Are there 6 episodes? How many are there? Because I've watched the first 2, but I don't know.
5, maybe 5.
Okay. Maybe I'll just blitz through them tonight.
It took him 14 months to record that. Flew all over the world. 14 months. Like, I just went to DC and I'm tired. I can't even imagine him flying around the world at his age. Like, whoa, my hat's off to you, sir. He means a lot more than us.
He's been doing this for a minute.
Yep.
For a while. I call him the Gandalf of ufology. He's our Gandalf.
Call him that to his face.
What's that?
Don't call him that to his face.
I'm actually I was thinking about calling him that tomorrow.
Do it. Go for
Gandalf. What's that? Yeah, exactly. Done for. He won't ever do this again. But I look forward to that. And now we're in waiting. The voting part of the Canadian Podcast Award is done. So we're waiting for the final winners to be announced. I did the preemptive thank you very much on behalf of the whole team, Michael Glosson, Katie and Sage and myself, blah, blah, blah. So fingers crossed we get it. That would be such a great award to win, right? Outstanding Science Award or series, I think it's called. So we could boast about that. That'd be pretty cool. But okay, guys, we're going to let you guys go. Michael and Katie, thank you so much for joining me today. You guys, I love seeing you guys. And not only seeing you in person, but seeing how much you guys are doing off to the side when we're not talking. It's amazing. And I love you both. We'll see you guys soon.
This was fun catching up. Thanks, guys.